Hey everybody, John the Other here. Obviously. Now 2 days ago, I would have told you that Marie Claire magazine is a women's fashion magazine, and that's all it is. Now, although I don't typically read women's fashion magazines, I would have been confident enough of the content to say to any woman that I cared about, don't read that, it will make you miserable and neurotic and suck the happiness out of you, replacing it with a need to buy stupidly overpriced makeup and come hump me lingerie that has the schizophrenic qualities of being somehow slutty and prudish at the same time. That was my attitude before I read an article called "I'm a Rape Victim Who Hooked Up with My Attacker Years Later." Now, before we get into the body of the article, I think it is worth noting, I have seen rhetoric used by people of a more conservative and religious leaning than my leaning, describing behavior and attitudes they find disagreeable with language I always thought was unnecessarily inflammatory. I would see somebody using a word like degenerate, and then I would make the comment suggesting they were being so hyperbolic that they discredited their own argument. After today, I take back all such commentary. The article begins, "Everything was black until it wasn't. Coming to felt like swimming up from the depths of a murky pond. When I reached the surface, I found a reality scarier than the darkness. I was on my stomach on an air mattress on a dorm room floor. A man crushed me from above, thrusting into me roughly from behind. With a blurry glimpse over my shoulder, I registered the face of a close friend's brother. My leaden brain, slowly grinding back to full consciousness, struggled to push away unwanted questions. How did I get here? Did I say yes to this?" Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person thinking this opening reads like a cinematic cutscene in a sex horror-themed video game. The air mattress is a nice touch. It suggests squalor without the writer having to supply a long list of ugly details. Also, the face-down position of the narrator is clever as well, reminding us of a corpse floating in a river. Excellent victim imagery, even if it presents practical difficulties in sexual access, where anyone trying to stage such a particular sexual scene would have problems. Now, if you have a partner, have them take this position, lying face down on the floor, and see if it's not a lot less convenient for the humping than rolling them onto their back or onto their side. I'm not saying I know for certain that this is fiction, but it sounds made up. And it is a story filled with a lot of details, which would, for a male protagonist, set the character up in the story as an anti-hero, if not a low-level villain. The article says, "Maybe I really was due for a one-night stand." She then details how several months later she attended a dinner with a group of her friends, including the guy she supposedly woke up underneath of, and at that dinner she flirted with him and then brought him home, ending up making out with him and cuddling. But this didn't lead to anything more than just cuddling, apparently. And you might be asking yourself, what the hell would she be doing dating a guy who, in her own story, raped her only months ago? The answer, of course, is supplied by the article's title, which is, "By seducing my assaulter, I was reclaiming the control I'd lost over my body and identity." Now, if you think this is stupid, idiotic reasoning that makes no sense, I would say you're correct. But still farther along in the article, the author explains that she did not recognize that she had been raped until about 8 years after the event. So let's revisit that opening paragraph again. "My leaden brain, slowly grinding back to full consciousness, struggled to push away unwanted questions. How did I get here? Did I say yes to this?" Well, assuming the event actually happened, and I'm assuming a lot now, then she probably did say yes. People in a state of blackout drunkenness can and do carry out conversations, make decisions, and conduct themselves in a manner that even their close friends have no indication that they are in fact blacked out. The article continues on. "I knew I should be ashamed and frankly worried that my boyfriend, who I'd been with for a year and would go on to date for another 3, would find out, but I was neither. Instead, I felt I'd scratched a hard-to-reach itch." Now, like most women's magazines, what Marie Claire sells its readers is lifestyle and aspiration. And the reason I point that out is not to pile any particular scorn on one writer of one sordid story, but to give you gentlemen a sample of what is being cheered for and promoted. And for clarity, I don't mean just the particular lack of integrity it takes to brag about being a cheater, or the bottom-feeding cheering on of a female lifestyle of blackout drinking and no discrimination open sexual service to whoever might come along. I instead refer to a broader all-encompassing and near-absolute rejection of personal responsibility for women, coupled with a towering sense of entitlement to unearned moral superiority. But of course, the story as relayed to the reader is about events that may or may not have happened a decade before the author wrote the piece published at Marie Claire. In fact, she says it was not until 8 years later that she came to a gradual realization that, heavens to Murgatroyd, she was a rape victim. But this is all rather slippery, because in this Marie Claire article, the revealed understanding after 8 years occurs 7 paragraphs in and 643 words deep into the body of an article that has already been hammering the reader with red-hot keywords including rape, assault, victim, and so on. But this women's lifestyle magazine isn't just promoting and normalizing the moral standards of a poorly socialized 20-whatever alcoholic bragging cheater and town bicycle. The psychopathic and insane stupidity of a woman seeking out her rapist and then seducing him into her bed after a year and then again after 8 years has a more professional explanation. The article reads, "Counterintuitive as it may seem, my impulse to initiate a second encounter with my attacker more than a year after the original incident makes sense to, quote, experts on sexual assault. Attempting to master a situation in which you previously did not have control is one way a lot of assault victims respond," says Jim Hopper, PhD, teaching associate in psychology at Harvard Medical School and nationally recognized expert on sexual assault and trauma. This sounds like a very reasonable and professional psychological explanation for conduct in a sex assault victim, which would appear to a normal person to run at complete odds with conventional behavioral psychology. Jim Hopper's PhD lends this new theory a lot of weight and authority. But this explanation is snake oil. We can tell it's snake oil because prior to 2017, Hopper and a handful of other specialist experts were training police agencies and providing expert courtroom testimony, hanging their entire new theory on an understanding of the amygdala, which is a part of the brain, which has since been soundly and completely disproved by advances in neurology made in 2017. So what did Jim Hopper and his fellow trauma-informed interview practitioners, including David Lisek, do when the scientific foundation for their radical departure from conventional investigation dissolved out from underneath them? They said, oh well, the science turned out to be wrong, but this departure from conventional interview investigation is 100% legit, so don't you all worry your pretty little heads about our previous claims of neuroscience turning out to be completely wrong. That's how we know that what they're selling is flim-flam. This is even documented on Jim Hopper's blog, a link to which I'll put in the low bar, as well as a Psychology Today article written by Jim Hopper, published in December of 2017. Link to that as well. But of course, it is very lucrative flim-flam, because Jim Hopper and other entrepreneurs are highly sought after and highly paid to train police forces across North America in interrogation and investigation that helps jail a much higher percentage of rapists than conventional investigations ever could before. Now, in case you have not noticed, there is a great deal of political pressure on the courts and the police to arrest more, to charge more, and to convict more rapists than they have so far ever been able to do. The feminists, who to all appearances have their grubby little fingers in every part of political life, believe, and I mean they truly believe, that number one, there is an actual rape epidemic in spite of the complete lack of evidence, and they further believe in the completely and totally moronic idea that women never lie about rape, because I suppose in the feminist imaginary world, women are not actual human beings, or something like that. But as we have seen accelerating in the mainstream media over the last decade, an increasing number of high-profile sex assault cases have fallen spectacularly apart due to the contradictory statements, the erratic conduct, and the obviously checkable lying by accusers, which looks to an observer a lot more like lovesick stalking than the behavior of a victim of abuse. And this perception cannot be permitted to continue. So we have a market demand for an alternative to investigation techniques which previously allowed police to separate actual victims from attention seekers, fraudsters, and high neuroticism dingbats who are convinced by their feminist friends that a merely imperfect sexual experience is the exact same thing as violent rape. And that's what this Marie Claire article is for. It is to convince women, the only people whose opinions matter, that chasing after a man and seducing your way into his bed is a positive indicator that, in fact, he is a rapist, and that the woman chasing after him is his victim. This article has the purpose of normalizing that profoundly stupid and insane idea, so that we can, as a society, pretend that there really is no such thing as a false accusation and convince women again, the people whose opinions matter, that innocent men are rapists and that it's perfectly fine to put innocent men into jail cells, no matter that the evidence would otherwise indicate to us that an accuser is not telling the truth. So before I wrap this up, I just want to say thanks very much to everybody who's been supporting my channel on Patreon as well as on PayPal. And to everybody else, thank you very much for your kind attention, and have a lovely, lovely day.